I don't think people realize that I'm actually 75 years old.
No, I don't think they know.
No, it's all the microabrasion skin work I do.
The Turkish
I'm just in a chamber most of the week. I'm just in a chamber.
Sitting in front of a humidifier.
Yes. On threads. Welcome to the Footy Museum and the Footy Museum podcast. My name is Justin Woody, and I am the co-director of the Footy Museum, and I am joined by my wonderful friend, who also happens to be a co-director of the Footy Museum. No, it's you, Maria Van Dyke and Lee. How are you, Maria?
I'm doing wonderful. Oh, wow.
It's so good to see you. And I'm always amazed that we end up doubling up our outfits between podcasts. But you're wearing that wonderful warm Leeds sweatshirt. I'm assuming that's for Leeds United, not Leeds University or the University of Leeds.
We'll never know because it's very generic.
Do they have, do universities have sport teams in England? So does like Leeds, the university in Leeds have a soccer team?
Maybe they have like their own
football
club, but like they would be like one of the community clubs. I don't know.
I wonder if they would ever play Leeds. Like, could Leeds
in
play
the
Leeds?
Open Cup?
In an Open, like the collegiate U.S. Open, maybe they could.
No, well, they have like that all teams, even non-association teams cup, don't they?
The FA Cup?
Yeah. Is that the one? There's two cups.
The Carabao Cup? The Turkish Super Cup?
There are two cups that are like everyone can play, but in one of them almost anyone can play, and one of them all of them can play.
Cups? Was there a point when soccer first began at the beginning of football? Was there a global shortage of cups and bowls, and so you would go through a whole grueling season just to have some kitchenware? Is that like? Were people just like at home with water dripping through their fingers and like, we need more cups?
And that's why for even like British TV game shows, the prizes are a cake plate.
That's right.
Or a teapot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're just giving away.
Maybe there are generations lost because they just didn't have proper diningware.
If only we had another cup.
So were there ever forks or spoons given out? In MLS, there's the wooden spoon, which is given to the worst team every year.
It's incentive to do poorly if you don't have a spoon.
But a wooden spoon is much more useful than, say, like a shield.
Well, you could cook a stir fry in a shield.
I guess. But then why a shield when everything else you're giving is cups and plates? I'm so confused. Cups, plates, and then shields. I don't know. It's so weird. We should look into that. But we're not going to look into that
Like, what
today.
else do I want? What's on my list? Like another pair of socks. That'd be great.
Today we're going to talk about something much more exciting. It's another cup. The African Cup of Nations. And it is actually the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations at Ivory Coast that is being held in January of 2024. Just another interesting moment in the history of this fantastic competition. It was moved because it was supposed to be in the summer of 23. That is the rainy season in Ivory Coast, and they decided it was unplayable. I think there was even some flooding or anyway, it was not possible, so they decided to move it to January. Leagues are not necessarily happy because they're like, oh, this is in the middle of all the leagues play. Africa, how dare you think of that with such short memory? Because I seem to remember a competition last winter. What was that? There was a competition in the middle of the season.
I can't think of what you could be talking about.
That kind of extended this. It was a lot of people were there.
And it
must have been the Turkish Super. It was in Saudi Arabia.
Weather.
Yeah.
Right.
No, not Saudi Arabia. It was not. It was in Qatar. So I don't know. It'll come to me. Anyway, I know that they're not the only ones who have done that. But anyway, that starts in the middle of January.
Do what you want, Africa. Do what you want.
I know.
It's your turn to choose.
You do, and you produce the best players in the world, so you should do what you want. So this is a biannual tournament. Like we mentioned, is being hosted in Ivory Coast. There are 24 clubs, so it's quite a huge tournament now. 24 clubs from 24 countries in Africa competing. and some of the top players in the world are represented in this competition. And this tournament is always super fun to watch and has increased in popularity as it's been easier to watch through social media clips and streaming online, because there are such great players, because you discover new players, because of some of the histories of these teams are so interesting. The atmosphere is great. So it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But today we wanted to do an old-fashioned footy museum design dive into some of the teams in the Africa Cup of Nations. So we each chose one, maybe two teams to talk about. Oh, maybe three, says Maria.
Maybe one shout out.
Oh my gosh. So I will start because that's the way the slides are in order. The crest I wished I could do was Gabon. Because this is just amazing.
It's so cool. See, that's how you do an open mouth.
Oh yeah, there's no
cat.
tongue hanging out.
There's no.
We're referring to the Shrewsbury Lions, who have their tongues
Who've
hanging
been
all the way.
eating peanut butter and they're like,
Someone tried to get them to look like they were talking. Put peanut butter on the roofs of their mouth. But I also love this because it looks like this this cat is wearing a hood with a scarf.
It's like a Boy Scout.
It's like a Boy Scout. But I love this, but they unfortunately did not qualify and are not in the tournament. So I had to go to the next best cat-based crest, and that is of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I like this one too.
Oh my gosh. Just truly fantastic. So
I love the spots on this.
oh, the
Is it a cheetah or is it a leopard?
it's a leopard. It looks like almost like a mask of a leopard, and it's just the way it's smiling.
Yeah.
And its nose is almost like a pair of eyes as well, and it's so incongruous with the rest of the crest.
I don't care.
So it's like a badge style crest with a circle in it where it says Federation Congolese of the football. So it's the Congolese Football Federation with a soccer ball in the middle, and then FECOFA floating across the bottom on top of blue and red bands. It's really distinctive and fun.
Yeah.
This is an interesting club because DR Congo has competed in AFCON under a lot of different names.
Yeah.
So they were originally competed, I believe, under Congo Kinshasa. And then many people may know them as Zaire, right? And then now they again are the Democratic Republic of Congo, not to be confused with the country of Congo, which is right next door, much smaller. It is one of the biggest countries in Africa, and it is also one of the richest resource-wise countries in the world. It has incredible resources of precious metals, diamonds, and it's for that reason that its history is so kind of tragic in a way, because it was really colonized by Belgium. A lot of its history was that colonial period where they basically tried to extract as much wealth out of the country as possible. There's been a lot of internal strife because of wanting control over that wealth. And I think in a lot of people's minds, when they think of Zaire, it was also an incredibly contentious period because of the autocratic ruler they had at that time. And we'll talk more about him in a second. But this is their logo when they were Zaire. So the leopards. So that's where that leopard comes from. And this is not, maybe a tough time in history, but really fantastic crest. I mean, I only know that that's a leopard because someone told me. It's like a Warsaw test of a leopard.
I mean, if it was out of context and it didn't say leopards on it, maybe kind of silhouette of Godzilla.
Yeah.
Maybe I have Godzilla on the mind right now because I am going to buy myself a poster of Godzilla for my living room.
Oh.
It doesn't matter.
Have you seen the new Godzilla?
No, we were going to get a vintage one.
Oh,
I haven't seen the new one yet.
nerds.
Jeremy
Okay.
loves Godzilla. Anyways, continue.
I forget. What are we talking about?
Back to political strife.
So this was like the crest prior to the one I showed you when they were actually the country of Zaire. And for most of the history of Zaire, the country was run by this man, Mobutu Sese Seko. You see him there, his picture on the top of a stand. This was actually taken at the famous boxing match between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman that took place in Zaire in the 70s. Mobutu Sese Seko was kind of known for his flamboyant style, always wearing that leopard skin hat. He was also a brutal dictator, really, that quashed any sort of dissent and held on for decades of power and really personally benefited from the wealth in his country while a lot of the country struggled. But he understood, like a lot of leaders, the power of sport to kind of win over the populace. And starting in the 60s, he decided he wanted to make Zaire a soccer powerhouse in the world and be the first African country to win the World Cup. The team actually did make the 1974 World Cup, and that was held in Germany. And there was a lot of consternation at that time because global football was growing. And there were fans who wanted to keep it kind of centralized in Europe and keep the powers in Europe who were dismissive of these non-European teams coming in, African teams, other teams. And you can imagine people weren't necessarily very generous in their views of a team like Zaire, which was actually a pretty good squad. But there was some other things going on behind the scenes. So Mobutu Sese Seko had brought a lot of the top players from Zaire back to the country to build the soccer program. He gave them houses, cars, money, and he offered them, for playing in the World Cup, huge bonuses, essentially. Well, after their first game, a loss against Scotland, those bonuses kind of disappeared. They were not paid that money. Rumor is that money was actually used to pay Muhammad Ali and George Foreman to do their fight in Zaire. And the team wanted to pull out of the World Cup, but FIFA said, no, you have to play. So their next game, they showed up only they didn't really try. They lost like 9-0, and it was an embarrassment. And people right away were like, oh, these Africans don't know how to play soccer, blah, blah, blah. And then it became very clear to the players, as expressed by Mobutu Sese Seko, if they do another performance like that, if they lose by more than 3 goals, there would be serious repercussions for them and their families. And it didn't help that they were in the group of death, and the last team they were playing was Brazil. So then we get to this game in Brazil, and we get to a point where there is a free kick awarded to Brazil, and this happens. So Brazil is lined up for a free kick, and a player from Zaire runs up and kicks the ball, boots the ball away. And everyone's like, oh, they don't even understand the rules of soccer. What an embarrassment. There was all sorts of awful racist things about it. But these players were scared for their families and their own lives. And they were playing Brazil, and they did not want to get Brazil too many goals. They did not want to lose by more than 3 goals. So they were trying to waste time in any way imaginable. So they attempt to run up and kick that ball was just another way to kind of waste time. And so, but for a long time, they were like the butt of a lot of jokes. Like they came and they didn't even know how to play, blah, 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 blah. But a much more troubling history existed. After that, embarrassment for Mobutu Sese Seko, he kind of stopped investing in soccer. You know, a lot of focus that same year went to the fight with George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, which there is a great documentary on Netflix about. If you haven't seen it, the fight called the Rumble in the Jungle is named by Muhammad Ali. It's fascinating. A lot of Americans at this time were drawn to Zaire because Mobutu Sese Seko also was pitching it as a center of African pride and skill and prosperity. And a lot of people drawn to it, like Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, were really aware of what was going on in the country at the time. So it was this big event. So I just found that was a fascinating history. And then they kind of faded. And as there wasn't a lot of funding on the team, they did not do well and did not make a lot of the AFCON competitions. They have had some amazing kits in the past. So this one's from 2015. I love the leopard on there.
I love the raglan sleeve.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
These great ones. On the left is a green Adidas with that central leopards. That's from 1980. And I believe the one on the right is from 1974. Just really fantastic. And then this great one from 1990. Just the epitome of 90s kits.
Yeah.
After Mobutu Sese Seko was exiled, and as a soccer nation, they began to develop again and slowly improve, and they have really returned to form, and they are expected to be one of the strong contenders. And they have actually won the African Cup of Nations as Zaire and also as Democratic Republic of Congo in the past. So that is who I chose. It's pretty interesting.
That's very interesting.
And I just did it because I wanted another cat head, and then it brought to this other history. And it really, I think, highlights a lot of the political reality of Africa, where it's such a resource-rich country that has been exploited by external and both internal forces, that if given like a flat playing field, it should, it'd probably be the most prosperous continent in the world because of all the resources there. And also how that's related to soccer, because it was always looked down upon, even though when you look at it, some of the best players in the history of the game have and continue to come from this huge continent, you know what I mean, with amazing athletes, and there's amazing stories there. And what's great, I think, about the growth of AFCON again is that I think that's being recognized and respected more. And in the next World Cup, there will be the most ever slots for African nations. I think it's up to 7 from 4, which is crazy that a continent that big would just have so 4 big slots.
Yeah, it's incredible because it's so huge and it's so diverse too. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
So there's still a lot of, there's still a lot of issues in the DR Congo, but I'm hoping that they do well in this year's competition. So now, who did you choose?
Well, I didn't get so deep into all the political history of the countries I got, but that was so interesting. Like, this is so fascinating. I'm just like, this one has elephants.
Oh, but when you have crests like this, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
these are fantastic.
When I was looking, I was like, I wanted to choose something that did feel very African. Like, and I was just kind of looking at a big map, and not all of them were up to date, but I was like, oh, this one feels, it doesn't feel the latest one. I put them in order. Okay. Top.
So
left.
First explain who they are.
I'm so sorry. We're looking at Ivory Coast, who are the hosts of this year's tournament. So they are not only the host, but they have this excellent crest history.
I'll take all of them.
Yeah.
One of each, please.
So upper left is oldest, bottom right is newest, and we're going across. Okay. Right. So what caught my eye was bottom right, which is the current one. Just this joyful elephant.
It is a very
so jovial,
happy elephant that has a soccer ball kind of in the top of its trunk. In its trunk,
it's like playing with a soccer ball as a toy. And the C for Côte d'Ivoire is the elephant's trunk.
Yeah, the peak of the trunk. It comes around.
It like curves around to make the C. So.
And it's a beautiful slightly faded green and orange.
It's a teal and orange, and it reminds me of the Miami Dolphins, who also have a very joyful
that's
dolphin mascot. And then the container for this crest is the outline of the country itself. So the map outline in orange, and then inside. And I like how they did it. They did a white stripe breaking up the outer stroke. So it's in the container.
It's fantastic.
White stripe, orange stripe, white stripe, and then the teal with the elephant inside. And that ball being orange inside as the center point, I think what makes it successful as a map outline. Because sometimes I look at map outlines and I'm like, I don't know if that works. But I think this does, because there's got that focal point.
Yeah, it's such a strong graphic. With the not just the ball, but the laughing elephant.
And then the older
elephant. I said elephant.
The one step older version of that. So this one, the current one, has been there since 2014 to now. And then the older version, which is very similar, except for that it's in a traditional shield shape. I'm not as crazy about, because it does feel more influenced by European design. And that was one thing I was like, do we need that? We don't need that. So that was but still joyful elephant, really cool design. That was 09 to 13.
Okay.
The one before that was back to a map design. This is my least favorite of the 5 we're looking at.
I still like the map design. Just outlined in a gold now, right?
And what I think is interesting about this map design is that the coast part of the map, so it's the southern coast, which is where the water is, it extends past.
Yeah, that is strange.
So it's like, it's the Ivory Coast.
Emphasizes that.
So it's part of the design, which is interesting. And then within that, there's a green ball with an elephant's head, and it's kind of more typical of what you see. Just a silhouette.
It's a frontal view now.
It's
not a joyful elephant. Yeah.
It's fine.
Can we talk about the one before that though? Because I'm in love with this one.
And I couldn't find this actually on any kit, but it was on the list I found. So I don't know if this was in an official capacity or like a extra capacity, but this was, I guess, in use in some way or form between 94 and 96. And it is like a really, really basic line drawing of an orange elephant who has the biggest eye.
It does, the biggest.
It's a profile of you. The elephant
the biggest side eye.
has the biggest side eye, and it's.
I think if you scaled that to elephant size, that eye would be 3 feet long, and it's a human eye too.
It's kind of pretty. It's a pretty eye, and it's standing on like blocks that are in the colors of the flag of the nation, which say FIF.
Also, the elephant is outlined in white, but the eye is in black, so it gives it a heavy like eyeshadow.
Yeah, it's very feminine. And then the Cote d'Ivoire is coming out of the elephant's trunk, like it's like
that's the origin
splashing
that led
water
to
behind.
Later.
Yeah, so it was cool. And then the one before that is more traditional, and they had this one for the longest. They had this one from the 60s to 94, and it's a traditional shield shape. It actually has 2 designs within it almost. Within the flag that's imposed on the shield shape, there's the front-on elephant, and there's Olympic rings, which I didn't find anything about. I don't know why there are Olympic rings on here. Yeah, it looks like
an Olympic.
And then above that, they have a 2 squares side by side, very small, atop the shield, and on the left there's this really great like profile of an elephant, kind of cartoony.
Which again, you can see how that would maybe lead to their later crests. Yeah,
with a cute eye, and then in the one on the right, there's an O or a 0. I'm not sure. I couldn't find anything about that, but it's also very cool.
Like a bean, maybe too. I don't know.
Yeah, and they have that
or an eye. I guess it's an IC, like Ivory Coast, maybe.
Oh, maybe. They have that on...
but it would be... No, it's DI, right? Because it's CDI. I bet it's one of those clever ones where it's high design, where it's the C, the D, and the I all together.
That makes sense.
That's it. That's what I would guess.
But yeah, this happy elephant in the current one just is like, come play soccer with me.
I hope that's it, because it actually works really well. The C on the left, the I dividing it, and the D on the right. This one looks so... Italian.
Yeah, it is very Italian.
Yeah. And the elephant is beautiful in that one too.
It's also in gold.
Yeah.
And since it's orange, white, and green for the flag colors. The gold plays really nicely off of that somehow. And yeah.
All great.
All
plus. A plus.
Yeah. Good job, host.
And they're
country.
such a fun team too.
Yeah. Let's see. Apparently their supporters, the team are of course known as the Elephants. I wonder why. But their supporters are known for like making the sound of with percussion and stuff. They're like making the sound of an elephant traveling through a forest.
Oh wow. It's amazing.
I tried to find clips of that, but I didn't find any where they actually sounded like an elephant moving through a forest, although it occurred to me that I don't know what that sounds like. So.
Sad.
I may never know what that sounds like.
Is this it? Is this all you have? Then?
No.
Oh.
I included the Puma kit. I had to because it reminded me of the Miami Dolphins again because it looks like a football jersey.
It's awful.
Yeah, those were bad.
Carry on, move on.
I had to acknowledge it.
Ooh, now this
these
is better.
Are good.
Yes.
See, we can see how good these are by looking at how bad the other one was.
It's true.
These are 90s kits, and I think we should do a whole episode on African kits in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because this is on the left here is a 92 keeper kit.
I am pro neon green
turtlenecks. Yeah. It was such a good...
over a pink. I mean, that is...
There's so much happening.
Cow.
It's so good. And bad, but mostly good.
It's
fashion.
And it looks like it has padded shoulder. Those stripes on the shoulders look padded.
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
there's structure in the fabric.
What I'm always fascinated how that people now are so enamored with 90s fashion because a lot of it was awkward and uncomfortable to wear. But I think what stands out in my mind is that people are trying something new and there's so little of that now. You know what I mean? This is so aggressively and enthusiastically forward.
I also
looking.
think, I don't know if it's because of social media or just TV or whatever in general, but when people try something new now, everyone's trying something new in the same way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you see it and then you see it everywhere and you're like,
That's
oh,
true.
Okay.
But it's always such small measures too. It's like, we added a green line or we moved the crest to the center.
We scaled it up.
Yeah.
We scaled it
This year we're going sans serif.
down.
Ooh.
And then
no, these are fantastic.
the one on the right is I think from 97. It's 97. It reminds me of Tony the Tiger. I like it. Okay.
All right.
And now I also wanted to highlight a couple more that
Interesting.
So this is South Africa, and they have two emblems because they have their soccer emblem, which is the one here on the left, which I'm not that crazy about.
No, it looks like a soccer ball behind
This is a soccer ball behind a circle with a map of South Africa in it.
and then horizontal lines through both to suggest like movement, I guess,
Interlaced television, very 80s.
or like peering through Venetian blinds.
Maybe. I don't know. But I wanted to talk about the one on the right.
Oh, okay.
Which this is what all of the South African, or at least what I could find the soccer and the rugby teams play with.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to highlight this because I learned this is a quintessentially South African thing when my friend whose father's South African was getting married, and I did a little illustration for her wedding of this flower, which is the national flower, the King Protea.
Okay.
And it's very like important in South Africa and symbolic of their national spirit. And it represents change and hope in the African tradition. So because I was looking for things that were quintessentially African when I was examining all the crests. And so I was like, yes, I learned about this from my friend. And I'm like, this is very African. And I'm glad that they have this on their crest.
And South Africa does not have a long history in AFCON because they were banned throughout all the years that they had an apartheid government.
Yeah, what was their first year then? It
would have been in 89 or 90 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here it is embossed. It looks very nice. And then here it is on their kits. Yeah. So I wanted to give them a shout out.
Very nice.
And then I had a little favorite here. This is Angola. And the flat version of this wasn't very interesting, but there was something about it that I was like, oh, I want to look into this. And then I saw the embossed version. I was like, this is cool.
So we're looking at an enamel pin that's orange with a red soccer ball.
And inside the soccer ball is a drawing of what I believe is a black sable antelope, which is their national animal. But it's very stylized. So it's like kind of a suggestion of one, not a literal drawing. So it's really cool. And I like the color play on this one with the black, red, and orange.
You don't see the black, red, and orange very often.
Yeah. So I just thought it was kind of striking. And then I also wanted to...
Look at that. Look at those thighs.
This is 1996.
Some 90s thighs right there.
The 1996 was basically their best kit that they ever had, and I haven't really liked one since, but wanted to give them a shout out.
Yeah, and it's red with yellow, red, and black stripes of varying widths starting from midpoint down. So it almost looks like a horizon line. And the number, I like how the number sits right on that horizon line.
Yeah.
And also, like, this is, I think the reason baggy kits caught on in the 90s is because everyone watched these African teams and they're like, they look amazing. But then they put them on, like, you know, like the 17-year-old belt, like, Dutch kid, and it just didn't have the same effects because this is like, this is majestic, and then I don't think it translates to all figures and types.
They're having flashbacks. I think this is against South Africa right here too. So that's a South African kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do my best to watch Africa. I think Egypt, again, is probably a favorite. They've won it the most. And you can't count
Morocco.
Morocco, after their strong showing the last World Cup.
Yeah.
It's going to be exciting. Ivory Coast at home. They're always good anyway. Now they're at home. So another cup to watch. One more cup.
One more super cup.
For all those poor footballers who have no kitchenware.
They're so thirsty because I run around so much.
So thirsty. We just want a cup. Please,
and we hate doing dishes.
Can we play 52 games in order to receive a cup?
Oh, shoot, we lost again. No cups for us.
1 year without a cup. Yeah. Oh, well. So that's it. And that's the story of football. Is that what? And that, my friends, is the story of football. You know what someone told me?
What?
So Marie and we work in the museum world. And last summer, I curated a show on Andy Warhol, and I recorded the audio tour. So, you know, you go through and you press numbers. So it's like number 1, and so and so. And I was using my museum
the one that you don't use on this podcast.
The one I don't use on this podcast. And it's like, if I did it on this podcast, it'd be like, what would it be? The elegant flowing robes of the national football team from Ivory Coast. Just hints at the broader, rich history of that nation. That would be my museum voice. And then someone said, "Oh, it sounds so great. You should do one of those sleep apps."
You know what, my nephew
and my whole professional self crumbled.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what my nephew told me is that he does listen to this podcast as his goodnight podcast, and that sometimes the outro music wakes him up.
Well, I'm just imagining he's going to sleep right now. And I hope you have wonderful football dreams. And I want you to realize you can be anything you want to be. Do not limit yourself. The world is an adventure waiting for you. Good night, sweet friend.
Good night, Joel.